my career was hard. I thought it was hard because I was young, or because I was learning how to work, or because I was still trying to figure things out. And all of those things were true, of course. But there were some special challenges associated with being a woman in tech. In my very first real job, a much older male colleague said, in a really creepy voice, that he could see my thong underwear through my pants. I wasn't angry. I was embarrassed and ashamed. Later, when I was a systems administrator, I would often have to spend time in the server room, racking servers or replacing hard drives. And this would require me to be crawling around on the floor. Male colleagues couldn't resist making comments. And how could they? There's a young woman crawling around on the floor. And I will never forget one comment of, being on your hands and knees is exactly where you should be. I didn't know this was harassment. I had never heard of a hostile work environment. Later, several years later, when I had the job of my dreams, I discovered that a male colleague was making not 10, not 20, but 30% more than me, doing the exact same job. And not only were we doing the same work, I was outperforming him. I didn't know this was gender inequity. I thought tech was a meritocracy. Stupid me. But the only explanation for all of this is that there was something wrong with me. So I decided to embark on what I now like to call Project Turn Myself into a Superhuman. So I started working 10 to 12 hours a day. I went back to school to get my MBA while I was working 10 to 12 hours a day. I decided it would be a really good idea to learn how to publicly speak, so I enlisted in Toastmasters. I decided I needed some leadership skills, so I enrolled in I joined a board of directors. I wanted to give back to the next generation because I didn't want them to deal with this shit, so I started volunteering with Girls Inc. I stopped drinking alcohol because I really needed to focus and didn't have time for that shit. And I became vegan, and I married someone who supported all of this. Now let me be clear. His support of all of this was to tell me to take a break and to get some sleep. He still says that. And after 5 years of this overfunctioning, I was exhausted. But I also found myself at the Grace Hopper Women in Computing Conference. You know, the woman, the computer science pioneer that's on this poster, y'all should know her. That was the first experience I had with a group of women coming together to support one another in the same industry. And it wasn't any industry, it was mine, it was tech, the industry that I kept fantasizing about leaving, but I wanted to stay. It felt so amazing. And while I was finally woke to the inequity that I and others had been facing, I also felt incredibly hopeful. And so the minute I got home, I started PDX Women in Tech. A group with a very simple purpose of encouraging women to join and to stay in tech. Now, about a year into this, I was feeling great. The group was gaining traction. I was feeling more ambitious, ready to take my career into management. And the other amazing thing that happened during this time is I gave birth to my first child, my daughter, Jet. So I decided to turn my maternity leave with Jet into a job hustle. So I began coffee meetings on the weekends, looking at job boards late at night, editing my resume in between crying sessions, both my daughter's and my own. And about 2 months into this, my husband comes home and tells me that he got a new job. His first engineering job, he was gonna be an engineering manager. He wasn't even looking. Jerk. And while I was so happy for him, I was suddenly feeling defeated and exhausted. But it's okay, because it happened to me. At the tail end of my 4-month maternity leave, I got a job working for a software company managing a large team. All right, done and done. I can take a break. I have a little bit of time left before my new job starts. I'm just gonna get some sleep. Well, then my future employer told me that they were struggling to get women to like apply for the job on the team that I was going to be managing. And they asked me if I would help them recruit women for their hiring event. I said yes, in spite of the fact that I was incredibly tired, and in spite of the fact that there was a little voice in my head that said, don't mix PDX women in tech in this job. But I decided to not listen to that little voice, and I just went right into another hustle, making calls, emails, trying to get people into this hiring event. And I was successful. I was able to get 15 women. All right, cool, done and done. I now have a couple more days left. I can just take a break. My employer then says, well, why don't you come to this event? Because after all, you're gonna be managing these people. You probably want to be involved in hiring them, right? I said yes, in spite of the fact that I was still incredibly exhausted, and in spite of the fact that this event was being held on the last weekend of my maternity leave. It only gets better. So the event was a total spectacle. All my new colleagues, fancy senior leadership were there. Here's the thing though, there wasn't any space for me to have a private room. So I was running out to my car, parked in broad daylight so I could pump. And while I was sitting in my car, I was looking at the door of the event space, terrified that somebody would come out and see me because all I had was a sweater to cover up with. And when I wasn't out in my car and I was back at the event, I was apologizing profusely because I was so afraid that they would think I was a slacker. Now let's be clear, no one has ever called me a slacker in my entire life, but I did not want it to start that day. But it was all worth it. At the end of the event, 5 of the women that I had recruited were going to be getting jobs. And this was the first time that I realized that I could have a hand in getting more women into tech jobs. And surely my senior leaders would be so proud that I could single-handedly change the ratio. So my new job, going into it, I had this really great recruiting win behind me. I was feeling so wonderful, and I was going to be managing people, doing work that I felt great and very confident in. In my first week, however, my boss, who was based in San Francisco, decided to give me a call to say that he didn't know what to do about this guy, Brad. You see, Brad was a little younger than me, and Brad had gone on this wonderful adventure to Portland to start this team that I was now managing. Brad thought that he was going to co-manage the team with me. Except my boss did not have that plan. And that damn little voice in my head was mildly concerned. I just pushed it aside because, what the hell, Brad had a hand in hiring me, and we totally hit it off in the hiring process. What could possibly go wrong? So the first couple of weeks were totally great. Then I started to hear that Brad was going out to bars with some of the people on the team, and my voice in that inside my head was a little not sure about that, but I just pushed it aside because I'm the boss. I can't be invited to go out to the bars. Until one of the women that I recruited informed me that while they were out at the bars, Brad was talking shit about me. Well, I wasn't gonna have any of that, and so I put my manager hat on and I decided I needed to hold him accountable, because that's what you do when you're a boss. So the minute I pulled him aside and I said, "What's up, Brad? Hear about this thing going on?" And he apologizes profusely, says it will never happen again. All right, Done and done. I got this on lock. I know how to be a manager. Except it doesn't stop. And not only is Brad not shutting it down, Brad is instigating it. And at this point, I don't know what to do. I'm at the extent of what my management capabilities are at that time, and so I'm looking for wise mentorship. So I decide to go to my boss. But instead of wise mentorship, what he tells me is that Brad had already been in touch with him. Brad was reporting that I was terrible at my job, that the team was totally unhappy, morale was in the toilet. In fact, they were totally planning a walkout. I was crushed. I walked out to my car and I cried. No matter what I did, I could not build thick skin over this situation. Every night on my way home to see my 6-month-old daughter, I would cry, and every morning I would wake up with tremendous anxiety, only to tell myself, you need to suit up, get to work harder, be better. In spite of this shit show with Brad, my team was going pretty well. It was growing, and at one point I had 50 people reporting into me, which is absolutely ridiculous. I was in meetings all day, and I was doing non-meeting work after hours. Finally, I was able to get my boss to tell me it was okay to promote some people into team lead. And so I did. After a selection process, I chose four men, 1 woman. Let me repeat that. 4 men, 1 woman. This was the tipping point. Brad did not think the woman I picked was qualified. Brad was so disgruntled about this that he actually rounded up a group of people on the team to file an HR complaint against me for sexism. My world was turned upside down. Could it possibly be that my work to get more women into a male-dominated field, is it possible that that could cost me my job? And these investigations were not a joke. They wanted to know about my team lead hiring process, why I thought that woman was qualified. They did not ask me about those 4 men, by the way. They also wanted to know about PDX women in tech, as if we were some kind of feminist separatist organization with the entire purpose of replacing every man with a woman. Okay, so what happens next is pretty anticlimactic. That HR investigation came to a close. I was not fired or censored. They did not find that I was preferentially promoting women or that I was a sexist. Brad ended up quitting. But there was some core innocence I lost after that experience. Because you see, my husband and I had management jobs, our first management jobs at the same time, and our experiences were so totally different. He never came home reporting that anyone was saying he was too hard on them. Nobody filed HR complaints against him. He just had to do his job. He didn't, nor still does, have to spend evenings, weekends, or lunch breaks pushing for culture change or recovering from bizarre sexist attacks. Things got easier for him, as they should when you have more years of experience under your belt, and things just got harder for me. When I look back at that earlier version of me, that me who thought she could turn herself into a superhuman, the me who thought she could lean in, the me who thought she could work ridiculously hard just to be enough, I have enormous compassion for her. In fact, that is the compassion I have for women just getting into this industry, because tech remains a very difficult industry for us. But there are rewards. If it weren't for those gross men in the server rooms or those jerk Brads, I would not actually have this super thick skin that I have today. And remember when I tried to turn myself into a superhuman? Well, I did not achieve superhuman status, but I do believe I am a bit of a badass. And that badassery can only be achieved with experience and hard wins. And remember that little voice that I kept ignoring? I don't ignore it anymore because it is my judgment and it is my intuition. And of course, I have 2 children that I adore. But I still feel like a failure all the time. I still feel like I'm not working hard enough or trying hard enough to make things better for myself or for others. I still worry that I'm speaking out too much, or I'm not speaking out enough, or I'm speaking out about the wrong things. But I'm also learning that there will never be an enough. And it is okay to say enough for now, and to take a break, get some sleep, skip some of those luncheons, and spend my weekends building that Lego juice bar set with my children.